and welcome to this week's Under the Pallet Wrap. And it's a slightly momentous occasion for Keith and I, as you may have spotted, we have a guest. Vince, introduce yourself.
Hello world, my name is Vincent. I'm here because I know these gentlemen for a little while, and I work in a similar industry, and I'm here to talk predominantly about the subject today, which would be what I've spent the last few years involved in, which is AI in and around supply chains. I myself am a retailer of many years, since I was 15 3/4, which got me into retail technology, which got me into supply chain technology, and brought me here. And I've been, I think I started working with AI-powered systems, or systems that claim to have AI, around about 2019 or 2018. So it's been a little while. So even a little while before ChatGPT was a twinkle in anyone's eye. So hopefully that will give me a little bit of perspective.
Cool. And we had a bit of a conversation about it before, Keith, didn't we? Which was more about how AI impacted careers in supply chain. But it's something we have quite a lot of interest in. So we thought, hey, let's talk about it some more, and let's talk about, how do we embrace AI? How do you make it actually help us? So great to have you here, Vince. We're very, very pleased.
Thank you.
And I think really, most people have played around with AI, particularly since ChatGPT became a thing. I think most people have just asked it, what should I wear, and can you write my emails for me, and things like this. And where there are all sorts of end of the world scenarios that people talk about because of AI. We just thought it would be a nice idea to sort of sit back a little bit and think about what AI does bring, and what really is it about, and how might it really help us.
Well, when we were talking before the show, I know the question was around automation, and so I'd be very good to talk about that, because I think there's a lot of people are on a precipice of what do I do with it. I don't think it's worth going back over all of the usual conversation about AI. What is it? What it isn't? I think a lot of people are now starting to form opinions. A lot of them are maybe not correct, though, on the various types of intelligence, what they do, what they can't do, versus what they're claimed to be able to do. And I think therein lies some of the problem. So when I talk to some of my customers, some of the things I hear, which are quite common as well, the exec are asking us what we can use AI for, which is never really a good starting point. A better question might be, how much does it cost? Or maybe even some parts, can someone from the technology department pop upstairs and tell us what it is? That would probably help as well. So everything that I'll talk about, I'll try and keep within certain parameters of what we mean when we say AI. Is it narrow? Is it general? Is it what people sometimes call superintelligence now? What its methodologies are. So are you using it for statistical purposes? Are you using it for predictive purposes? Are you using it for generative purposes? And then the one that everyone talks about now is, are you trying to give it its own fingers and thumbs and give it agency so that it can do things, what people call agentic AI? So I'll generally talk within those terms of reference, and I'll try and relate anything that I say back to some element of that. So it has a little bit of an anchor point in what we mean, rather than just saying AI, because it can get a little bit, your eyes can roll into the back of your head, and you can get a little bit when someone says AI. So I'll try and be quite specific.
absolutely. So general business, the way they might approach AI. You know, you've been involved for some time. What's your interpretation of each of these buckets, as you call them? Where do you see the future?
Well, when I when I started. By the way, I should probably say I'm not a genius. I'm not someone who spends time trying to tinker with a neural network, fiddling with weighting parameters and doing all the data science stuff. But I have worked with some very, very clever people who've done a very good job of giving me some sort of degree of education, and were very kind to my intellectual curiosity, if you like, to help me along understanding some of this. But what I see is predominantly disruption. It's incredibly disruptive. So I come, in my latest iteration, I come from the SaaS software business. You might have heard of something called the SaaS apocalypse, right? So that's comes from one of the big changes we had in technology, going all the way back to, there's a computer, there's the internet, there's mobile technology, there's the cloud and subscription services, and now we're in this next revolution. And what I saw is an awful lot of disruption, and mainly to that latest business model of software as a service, SaaS, which is people in buyers. So I predominantly work with retailers. So people in retail technology saying, do I really want to sign a contract for the next 5 years for a few $100,000 a month for this application right now, because I don't know really whether I can do this in-house yet or not. I don't know what AI can do for me. My last Substack, one of my last Substack posts was lending a little bit on that. Or what have the Romans ever done for us? What has AI ever done for us? And we don't really know yet. So there's a lot of hesitancy and a lot of disruption around the market, because, well, do I need to sign that contract? Do I need the contract I've got? Where am I with renewals? What should I do? Because the business case before was quite straightforward, right? So for SaaS systems, you took all of your expensive in-house IT that you paid an awful lot of money for server rooms somewhere on a property to be maybe run by a third party. You were paying them a lot of money to do God knows what maintenance and support and all the rest of it. Fine, do away with all that, move it to SaaS. Now I don't have any hidden costs. I know exactly what I'm paying per month, right? Well, now that could go the other way, right? So now it could be, well, instead of not paying any attention to that, it's just happening on a cloud somewhere. Well, maybe now I just need 2 or 3 developers, and they can vibe code me an app that now does a particular job I needed to do in the business, that sits on top of my data platform, if I have a data platform, that's quite lightweight, and I can maintain, build it, not license it, deliver it, and look after it myself. Now, that sounds great, but there's an awful lot of implicit assumptions in there. Do you know what you're trying to achieve? Do you understand, what your business case is? Is your data good enough? Is your data in the right place? Do you have the right foundations in place and all that sort of stuff? So
this is what I was going to mention, because I've heard almost every business I speak to is they want to keep in touch with AI. And I've got a continuous improvement background, so I'm obviously all about root cause and improvements that actually add value. Do you think that a lot of people are talking about AI as a game changer when they don't even know what their problem is? They don't even know what they would actually use it for, what value it would bring. They think it can save them time, but they're not looking at maybe the whole picture, identifying where it could help them.
Yeah, there's a couple of major issues that I think of, and this may not be a completely exhaustive list, but I don't really think people understand how much it costs. They don't understand the mechanics of of, especially if you're talking about large language models, so for being specific, and about how tokenization of that machine conversation that's going on, how that's being charged, what it means to their budgets. And there's some stories recently. I just forget the name of the company. I forget who it was now, and I shouldn't guess in case I get it wrong. But I think they burned through their entire budget in the first 2 months of the year or something like that, because they didn't really understand the cost structure of using a large language model. Yeah. So there's understanding
parameters of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's understanding there's understanding the cost of it, and then the second thing, and arguably most important, is, to your point, what do you want it to do? Do you want it to replace someone? Do you want it to solve a particular problem that your team haven't been able to solve for a long time? Or do you want it to make everything better? And how do you measure that? And that's really the third problem. So I don't really think, having worked around systems for a little while, and looking at people going through digital transformation and all the rest of it, one of the things companies are most reluctant to do is measure anything with any real teeth.
For me, measure is one of the most important things, coming from where I come from, and I'm a believer that you can measure anything.
You can, and you
anything.
We could talk the same language about define, measure, analyze, iterate, control, right?
Well, if you haven't done the definition, it's for me, it's hard to justify a solution unless it's absolutely obvious. If you can't
but how do you
measure the benefit?
But how do you define a problem for a solution that you don't understand?
Well, yeah, so, you can't even define it. I'm not sure whether, I don't. Obviously, some people have had success stories with AI. I haven't.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm keen to hear some of them actually, because we don't tend to hear. We hear the bad stories, like the business who got rid of their entire customer service team and then brought them back because they had so many complaints. That strikes me as strange, just because how do you know? You must know how much customer service costs, the impact, the benefits, to just replace them.
I think that's one of the easier ones. So I think who deployed some automation or AI technology into their customer service area and were able to redeploy people into what they as a business considered were other value add activities. So their benefit was they were taking people away from work that could be automated and giving them something, you could argue, less mundane to spend their time doing. And again, it's we're getting, you can get very quickly you can get to automation before you've gone through any of the other stages of introducing this technology into your business. So if I reflect on the question that was proposed when we were talking originally about this conversation, it was, should I automate next year? And my first question to a company that says, should I automate next year, is, have you augmented already? Well, what does...
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean,
what does augmentation mean? Well, are your teams getting better at what they're doing because you're able to deploy newer technology without cutting them out of the loop altogether? So my premise is that before you get to automation, step back, and there's a step for your business, which I use the word augment. Yeah. So that your people are using the technology to be better at what they already do, what you already measure you want from them. Now, I think there's a little truth to say that in most businesses now, your employees are using AI. Why wouldn't you, if you want to make your emails better, if you don't want to spend so many hours at the desk with PowerPoint, which was obviously what I spent the time of my life that I've missed with PowerPoint. Yeah. And now I don't have to touch PowerPoint at all. Now, I think it's worth every bit of resource in the world already just for that. But your people are already doing it. But I would argue they're probably not doing it consistently. They're probably not doing it measurably. They're probably not doing it with the same tools. And they're interpreting the task that they think adds value for AI themselves based on their focus of what they need to deliver into the team.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that always comes back to me whenever we're talking about this, or if I'm ever trying to do something through AI, and I'm just by no means any expert in it, and I'm based generally using it by trial and error to see what I can get it to do. I think one of the biggest challenges that you don't actually know what it is doing, or you don't know how it's coming to the conclusions that it is. Well, that's my impression anyway. And I don't, and one of the things I think about, almost like getting to a point where you can trust what this is doing, is I personally, I'd want to be able to understand how is it reaching these decisions, which I don't think is always that easy to get to. And is that just my naivety around using them, or is that just the way that it is?
I would argue, Dan, that it's far from naive that you're questioning, because you're using your expertise in using the tool. You're questioning it, and you're trusting your own judgment against the efficiencies that you're getting. I'm not sure. I mean, I haven't witnessed people just churn out stuff that. I mean, obviously, I think you'd guess if someone was just chucking out reports that didn't have any basis behind them. You'd like to think
that might be a naive.
Being experts in our fields, yeah. But I'm not sure how many people aren't. I think people see it as a game changer and a time saver. But whereas we are experts in our field and we can sort of see how it can help, how it can't, when you would use it, when you wouldn't. Do you think there's an element that would just use it whatever the case? Because it's
already happening.
To use it for reports, and they use it.
My argument is that's already happening, and if you're an executive in a business, my fairly solid bet is that you don't know to what extent, and you're certainly not measuring what it's doing to your business. You're not measuring what it's doing to your productivity. You could go from massive extremes. You could have someone you're paying, a reasonable stack to, and they're doing most of their job from a telephone in the Maldives, because they've cracked it for their particular job, what they need to do, and that's why they're never in the office in a meeting anymore, because
they don't really exist.
They don't really exist, or more. Now I'm being extreme, but my point is, do you know what of your company's IP is being uploaded to a cloud server somewhere, because someone in your team feels the pressure to shortcut the time it takes to process a contract?
Yeah. And AI is using information that's out there, right? And it's like, well, if you don't know what information it's drawing on to reach its conclusions, how can you?
Well, that's a different thing. So if I reflect on, say, using AI to predict, so we work in supply chain. So let's say using AI to predict demand.
Yeah.
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 Do you know how your brain works? Not really.
No,
you because when you hear a song and it makes you cry, you don't really know why, right? Or whatever the metaphor is, right?
Yeah.
No, or the analogy is. So, do you really need to know, or do you just need to measure the executable outcome? So, if you're using a predictive system for demand, and it's using 200 configurable parameters in a neural net, that is being data scientists spend a lot of time to train and weight the elements of the weights in that neural net. You're not going to know how that works. You're not going to understand it, right? But what what you can understand is what you see in your demand signals after
I guess
you've executed on the prediction, right?
Yeah, so I guess the answer to that is that yeah, you're right. That no, you can't really understand how it does it, but if you're measuring the outcome, and let's say it's predicting demand, and since you've been using the AI tool to predict your demand, your accuracy has improved, then I guess who cares how it does it, right? It does it right, and it's doing it better than those 10 people I used to ask to do it. And I am a firm believer. I am a firm believer in actually not replacing people with this stuff, but enhancing people. Right?
Well, or augmenting them.
Or augmenting them, as you say.
So those 10 people, you're not. In all my experience, and I've been working in retail now since 1985, right? So I'm going to make a rough statement here that may be controversial. That says I don't care what your SKU catalogue looks like. You are not going to get a system that's going to perfectly predict all of your demand. You're going to have edge cases. You're going to have points of failure. You're going to have I don't know, massive tariff changes that all of a sudden mean a significant supply route from somewhere in the world to another part of the world you have to circumnavigate, or whatever it is. But what can happen is rather than 10 people trying to do everything and not being able to cover everything because 80% of their focus is busy work, all of a sudden you have 70% of their capacity focused on value add, and 30% in checking the outcomes of the busy work that a machine is doing.
Yeah, and that's value. Yeah. That's value.
And that's real value. So, in the problem that I see, and again, being somewhat old enough to remember some of these cycles, the .com years. Someone in a C-suite, and I shouldn't always rag on the C-suite, but they're very busy people. They don't often have time to understand everything that's going on in the world. So, the question comes down, do we have a website? Someone says, no. Well, I think we need one. Why? Well, I don't really know, but I'm pretty sure we need one, so go and make one. And I have a feeling that that's where we could be with AI and automation right now.
Oh, for sure.
Go on.
I think a lot of people just don't want to be left behind. But the key word for me is value. What you're trying to do, what you're spending your time doing. It's what I love doing. Is going into businesses to actually tell them what they're doing, what they're spending their time doing, the unmeasurables. But I think, it's a race, isn't it? We look back at some of the early websites. I mean, absolutely. You can't even imagine what they thought, where they thought there was a future in some of these things.
Well, the opposite pressure I can imagine someone in the C-suite might say is, but Vincent, you have to understand that the margins I'm operating on, if my competitors suddenly see a step change in their margin because they've automated before me, I'm cooked, right? And then investors or VC will turn to me and say, well, where were you in this AI race? Oh, well, we were taking it slowly and being very measured and trying to define use cases. Well, that's all very well and good, but now your competitor is that far ahead in market share to catch, right? So it like everything else that happens in the C-suite, I think we can get a little bit lost in our little world, in our little perspective, of well, obviously you're an idiot if you try to do that, but that isn't necessarily going to help the business. You have to be able to have the balance, right? And I think part of that is in education, so that your advisors are advising you well on what your competitors are doing, and you have a good breadth of understanding around the marketplace to stop you. What is it we used to call it once upon a time? You're being on the bleeding edge, right? So you do something and then you cut yourself and you cause yourself a lot of pain or worse. But then being left behind is worse. And ultimately it's a judgment call. So what I recommend, obviously, what I would recommend is that they all ask ChatGPT, what should I do? Should I automate or not? No, I joke. But
one of the questions
you've got to balance. You have to be cognizant that there is that tension in the C-suite, right? And
who do you think you should employ? We hear a lot about AI replacing people, but in order to make the right decisions, who do you think is a key employee of a business these days around AI? Someone who would be able to navigate their way around this stuff. What's your opinion on that? Who should businesses go to when it comes to making the right choices around AI? Should the tech team be looking into this?
Well, the thing is, you could argue both sides that one, it's so new. Yeah, who has that experience? I mean, if you look on LinkedIn now, you'd be forgiven to think that just about 3 million people have implemented agentic AI frameworks in their business successfully. I'm here to tell you that they haven't. Yeah, so there's that element of it, that it's so new. But then again, some of the business trade-offs remain the same regardless of the technology, right? So my personal opinion is the people who are best mandated to that are the people who you give the mandate to, who you give the objective to, who you allow to go and get the education, ask the question, but they're coming from a point of knowledge of your business. Such as it always has. There's never been anyone so useful to me in the years that I've been implementing technology, and that's been a long time now, other than the person you take out of the operation and you put into that project team because they know the business. Yeah. And they are the most, you can get all the consultants you like, and we've all worked with lots of them, right? A lot of them are very clever, and a lot of them add terrific amount of value. But sometimes there's a flaw that they have, is that they understand that cleverness that they have, and it sometimes stops them from listening to the people that are working in your business. Yeah. And in my experience, the most effective ones are the ones that are smart, but are also smart enough to know, well, I don't know your business, so you can tell me about that, right?
They know what they don't know.
Yeah. One of the things that I can see happening, as let's go back to the predicting demand thing. And you've got this tool that's giving you, this new demand curve. It's proving more accurate than the past. And then maybe you're in a S&OP discussion, and somebody, I don't know, in the commercial team disagrees with it and challenges you on it, right? And says, well, I don't think that's right. Why have you come to that conclusion? Yeah. Is it going to be an acceptable answer to say, well, we fed it into the AI tool, and this is what it told us? And
I don't think
over the past 6 months it's been very good.
Well, I don't think
it's accepted because suddenly you seem to have your ability to understand why you want to use this demand other than how you used to do it. Right?
Well, the answer to that question previously was it was Mr. X with his spreadsheet that our supply chain depends on, who's been giving us that answer for the last however long, and we've always trusted it, right? So all we're doing is Mr. X is getting his number from an augmented place.
But I could dial in Mr. X and ask him.
All I'm saying is that business race, he doesn't change. That tension's always been there, right? What you're alluding to is, is it a commercial that run the supply chain, or is it supply chain that run the supply chain within parameters?
I don't know what I'm saying.
You might have said it in the past.
But I think I guess where I'm coming from is like, when it was somebody, maybe I'm answering my own question here. I guess you can challenge the AI, right? You can go back to the AI and say, so why have you put a 20% uplift over there on that week? What's behind that?
Give an explanation.
I would say that Mr. X is being augmented because he now has a much better dashboard to measure those outputs, because he's not spending his time with the pivot in the spreadsheet actually coming up with the number in the first place. But now he's
interrogating what it is, what the number is.
Now he's running much better measures across a fully automated dashboard that allows him to dig and poke wherever he needs to, and through the use of interrogatable data with maybe an agent that's helping him, he can get better. He can get his answers quicker and more effectively.
Yeah, and more in depth maybe even. And I guess that is one of the things that even in the small amount of AI things that I've done is the awesomeness about it that I love is that ability to just go, I don't really understand, explain that, tell me why is that number there, why doesn't that, it doesn't see, you can interrogate it and it'll quite happily explain it to you for hours on end, right, if you want it to. And I think that is a wonderful thing.
Again, there are things you have to be aware of. Certain biases. Machines telling you what it interprets you want to hear by its understanding of your question.
Yeah.
So again, you have a certain level of skill maybe that's required, because people will be screaming, yes, but they hallucinate all the time. And of course they can hallucinate. But we can all have a bad day. Or we can all come into work a little bit hungover. Maybe we're seeing double on the calculator. But it's the measures that you put in around how your people interact with those outcomes and how you, I keep saying the word.
Yeah, and if you interrogate data, you interrogate data anyway as a living, and you're skilled at that, and you want to augment your skills, you're going to interrogate the answers it gives you. That's where I feel education, as you say, Vince, is 100% key. Do you think there's many good educators out there? Where do people go to get the most reliable education on AI?
YouTube. So I think.
Well, I've learnt most things.
I think my experience is too narrow to answer that question. However, what I would say is I think how you construct it. I'm lucky enough to work for a company that puts some time into educating its people around AI and spinning up some courses and so on. And I know that content exists, and you can find it on LinkedIn. But the machines themselves are very good at helping with that. So when I left my last gig 5 weeks ago, I decided that I wanted to develop software, which I'd never done before in my life. I didn't know how to do it. And the machine taught me. And you've probably heard the phrase vibe coding before. And I didn't know how to use Aegis. And now, 5 weeks later, I've got one software project in pilot. I've got another one in design. I've got 2 teams of agents and 2 project managers and a governance framework on top of that, developing the software. And I've been through the loop and pushed apps out onto the App Store and understood all of that and blah, blah, blah. And it's been through machine tutelage, because I'm not a software developer and I'm crap at maths.
And let's just be clear on that these people these employees, or if you like, partners that you've got doing that are AI agents, not people. Right?
Yes, because I was taught how to use them, what they were, what they could and couldn't do, how to use it, how it fits into a framework. And now I've gone so far as that I have on my local machines, I've software that I've written myself that allows me to spin up agents and either outsource to a Chinese cloud frontier model or use a local model running on my local machine to do the work. And it's now doing things on my computer for me without me doing it myself, because it doesn't take you very long if you've got a certain level of interest. To your point about being educated, it doesn't take very long to learn how to do it now, because the tools are out there.
But I think there are roles that suit an agent kind of doing on your behalf, and others that realistically are not quite so likely. I mean, I think the answer is obviously yes, but I mean, is it more the technical, analytical stuff, but the more, I don't know, strategic leadership?
No, I don't think so. So when I say I have 16 agents, I have 2 software teams, and those software teams have personas within them. and each persona has a job description and an objective and its own little file that tells it what it is, what it's about, and what blah, blah. And those roles all work together to produce my software, which I now get to, instead of worrying about lots of the minutiae of that, I get to decide what I want it to do and how I want it to look. Yeah, and that I may want certain type of content. So one of them is a human-to-human piece of software, and I have a behavioural scientist agent, and their job is to research behavioural scientist stuff on the web, bring it back for content, and say, well, we could look at it this way, that way. And I do get a kick out of asking the team for a proposal on something that I've woken up and thought about, and I see the little boxes come up as the project manager spins them up on the harness, and they all pop up. They have a little chat, and I get a one-pager that's basically the output of the meeting, with what we talked about, who chipped in, what they chipped in with, and what the recommendation is. And
well, I was going to say, do you ever chip in yourself and say that's not what I asked?
Well, on the output, yeah, and I had to last week, because I nearly lost control of my bladder last week, because in the output the project manager told me that unfortunately it was their job to represent that the solution architect had essentially got a little bit chippy about scope creep, because I'd woke up in the morning and had another idea. and the solution architect was, this is the second idea you've had this sprint. Are you sure that you want to? How many times have I had that conversation for real?
Probably less than that.
Oh, at least it didn't have an emotional tantrum and walk out the building for a walk around the office for
it didn't get clouded.
But it absolutely was part of the conversation, yeah. Which kind of well, it really made me laugh. But I of course can override anything the way it's set up. So again, because I have a little bit of a background in this, I defined a methodology that I wanted to go from idea to functional spec to technical spec to testing spec to development sprint, blah blah blah, whatever it was. But I basically got the project team to settle on a methodology, and obviously I control that methodology, and I kick off the sprints and all the rest of it. So I'm in full control, but now I can develop a software product in the space of a week.
Is there anyone in the team? Is there anyone in the team that you think, oh, no, not much good, I could get rid of him and put someone else in?
No,
because is it an easy team to manage?
Ultimately, it would have been my fault because I didn't get the specification right in the spec file right. Yeah, so I've been through a couple of iterations of developing the agent spec for a particular role. Interestingly, there has been one or two times when the machine has said, I'm spinning up two of the agents for this conversation. And I thought, well, why aren't you spinning up this agent or another part of the team? And I've actually had to say, no, I want contribution from the tester. I want to know how long this will take to test, as well as, is it a good idea to build? So interestingly enough, I do have to be somewhat mindful of who in the team is being included in the conversations. Again, very much like real life.
The leaders are safe then.
Yeah, well,
at the top.
Well, yes, and one thing about it is I can work with colleagues who have good ideas themselves. So one of the pieces of software I'm developing is not something I'm an expert in the domain, but a colleague has heard my story about what I've done and what I've already brought to a certain point. And he said, well, what about if we could do this? Because I've had this in my head. And now it's a project team. Building out his vision.
Oh, maybe we should talk after this. We've had some ideas too. Anyway, different.
Well, the problem is, and if people see this online, I don't want them to get the wrong idea, because there's a million people writing apps in their offices or bedrooms. The problem is distribution. What's the problem you're solving? How do you get people to understand that you've solved that problem, and how do you get it to them?
Yeah,
and those are the same business
stuff.
problems. Those are the same business problems that ever there been. But to your point of your original premise, I can now focus on that Whereas before I couldn't even get anywhere near it, right? Because I needed a software architect, a cloud architect, and so on. Don't need those now.
If it was an augmented team, though, so partially agents and partially people, do you think the agents can manage the people?
Not in the way that I have it set up.
Yeah.
So, and I think the answer to that, honestly, is truly no. So we're a long way away from general intelligence. So to manage people, you need general intelligence, you need experience, you need emotional intelligence, you need blah blah blah. Okay. Yeah. To manage a task, no, you need narrow AI. But I have a project manager managing a task. But the main problem is he doesn't really have a concept of time, because unless I schedule his automation, he's living in a cloud, and as far as he's concerned, he doesn't really know if it's Tuesday night or Thursday morning. Right?
Oh, yeah.
So they're not cognizant of time unless you schedule tasks, and then by all means he can spin up, check the scheduled task, check an inbox to see that he hasn't had a reply to the email that he sent my colleague for some explainer on a particular use case, and then he can send an email from my email account to that person to say, I haven't seen that yet, so that the team aren't working on it yet. That can happen. Yeah. Right? But that's a narrow AI. That's a very narrow focus. One of my favourite things to do with superintelligence is I like philosophy. So I spend a little bit of time, I spin it up, and I say, I want Hegel to talk to Schopenhauer about the meaning of life. And I just want to sit back and watch. Yeah? And then I watch a philosophical debate that I'm in no way capable or intelligent enough of cutting through their key principles and their views of the world. But I can get a report and say, well, they disagreed on that, they agreed on this, and and blah blah blah. That to me is super intelligent, right?
Yeah.
And
very different benefits as well.
With very different benefits, and of course we're nowhere near. I think we are at super intelligence, because I think things can be super intelligent because you can have a model that is big enough to understand most of human history. Going back to your question earlier, Keith, who's in a position to tell us? I don't know. I have to walk a balance in this conversation, because at the minute it's very easy, like everything in our world, to be polarised. You're either for AI, in which case let the robot masters come, I'll be perfectly happy, or you're absolutely against AI and you have a Luddite-esque conversation. I try to be somewhere in the middle. Has it improved my life recently? Yes, because I can bring products to market that I couldn't bring products to market before. Would I give it my credit card to do that? No. Right? Because I honestly don't know if it's going to suddenly wake up in the morning and go, I need more bandwidth for that question or whatever, and just pop off and buy some.
How do you know? How do you govern it? How do you know until you live it? And then each moment is a new moment.
It might have been Plato that said, when the society's music changes, there should be laws to govern the nature of that change, because music's going to it affects society. Or I might have just heard that on a record and thought it was cool, but I'm pretty sure it's true. And we go back to similar principles.
And to try and, you know me, I'm a little bit practical and pragmatic about all this stuff. And so if you've gone through this period of really thinking about what it is that we want and where we think we need to go, and the decision is, I think we do need to, deploy some of this technology. It can really help, and for whatever reason, it doesn't really matter at this point. How do you go about finding? Because when you're talking about maybe sort of a major sort of supply chain operation that you want to involve, some AI tools to really support what you do. You don't generally go and ask ChatGPT or Claude, right? I mean, there's. How do you determine who should I work with, and how do I? What kind of AI, tool do I need? Or do you just go on to ask ChatGPT, which is the best tool?
Well, there's questions of scale in there. So depending on the nature of the business you are, you probably have pre-existing vendors. I would be surprised if you're a supply chain business. I'm surprised if you don't have pre-existing vendors beating your door every day of the week with why their new systems are better and blah 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 and more agentic or more AI this or more AI that. If you're dipping the toe in the market, then you could always go to RFP process, but don't do that. But you can find people, find some advisors that you can trust who seem to have an idea of what they're talking about, and ask them to help you. But you've more than likely got people in your business who are probably coming to you and saying, I think we could be doing this, I think we could be doing that. Listen to the people in your business who are actually already coming to your door, or give them an opportunity to come to you, like the suggestion box, right? Yeah, because AI is now, the genie's out of the bottle. Lots of people are having ideas and a degree of understanding, and your next big business change idea might come from some lass that sat in behind a desk somewhere who just needs to be given the ability to say what's in her head, right? Or it might come from a trusted vendor who's actually made a reasonable step change in a piece of technology, and you interrogate it properly. But I think however you decide on that, it's about almost more than the choice. It's how do you implement, and we talk about different measures, speed to market or time to value, whatever it is. But you just have to be mindful that when you're deploying a technology that maybe isn't the most well understood, because going back to what we talked about, a neural network and outcomes and blah blah blah, then make sure that it's sandboxed correctly in your business. Make sure you do all of the things that you would normally do with good governance in technology to deploy systems in the right way. Yeah. And for heaven's sakes, measure. My particular thing is, before you do all of that, if you're in an existing business, start at the very beginning. Go out and understand, is your understanding of your business operating model up to date? Is it well understood by every layer of your operation? Is it as understood in the boardroom as it's understood on the warehouse floor, the shop floor, or whatever? Do the measures that you use to... Often not. And are the measures that you use to measure that operating model well understood, so that the measures that exist on the shop floor or the warehouse floor are reflected in the measures that are seen in a balanced, let's call it steering wheel, at the exec level? Yeah. And if you're happy that solid foundation is there, then why not look for opportunities to automate? Because all you're really going to do is reinterrogate that operating model and look for the opportunities. And if your business understand it that well, they're going to tell you what they are, right?
And
because the problem exists today.
It's all those good change protocols that you should do in any kind of development and project management. Don't try and change everything at once.
Well, it becomes philosophical.
Yeah,
it becomes philosophical, right? So you can fail fast and work backwards. Yeah. But it's always good. It's always good to do that from a position of very strong foundation and strength. Yeah. Or you can build forwards. And if I think about my days mired in ERP technology, because of its nature of being sequential, you start with a purchase order and you have to get that handling right, and then those projects. How long do those projects take? They were only supposed to, a scaler or a hyperscaler, whatever they call them now, or a large vendor would tell you it's only going to take you 18 months. Yeah, 6 years later, right? Because you were in pursuit of perfection, and it was very linear progression, right? Yeah. So you can always fail fast, and this technology allows you, if you've got good data, I should say that, it allows you almost to jump to the end and say, here's a bunch of data, tell me what my business could have done better, or tell me what the better outcome could be, and then I'll work that backwards into my operation. is an approach you can take, right? It depends what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And with what.
Yeah, I think what you said earlier about your term augmentation. I think the worry is that people think, oh, this sounds great. I'm going to deploy, AI to do all my demand planning. You put it in, starts to give you some good results, so you sack all the people that used to do it, and then just rely on the machine, and then something starts to drift and it starts to go. So the power of this is really using it with the experience of the people that you have to increase its power, its intensity, its ability. And maybe you'll be able to do a lot more than you used to do with the same 10 people, rather than say, I've just got a machine now and I don't need to worry about it.
So those 10 people, the way I see that, if you think about retail business, those 10 people, instead of spending 80% of their time churning out the numbers and 20% fixing what was wrong, they can be spending 5% of their time making sure the numbers are being churned out, another percentage of their time making sure that they're managing the exceptions, and a very large percentage of their time working with their commercial colleagues that they understand the numbers and working on the future plans, and further integrating commercial tensions and supply chain pragmatics to better outcomes in the future, because all of a sudden you've given them that time to collaborate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if there is anything that people take away from the discussion we've had today, it's that really, if you really want to enhance or draw out the power that something like AI can give you, it can make your people add value to your business so much more, because it takes away a lot of stuff that people do that is not so value adding, and it's just grind.
Yeah.
And and I'm not saying you want it to give you intelligence, but I think you can do so much more with your people when you've got the power of AI supporting them, rather than going in with this philosophy as, how do I replace my people?
Yeah, that is a very flawed philosophy, because you should be going into anything with, how does my business arrive at better outcomes, and how do my team do better?
It's a journey, right? It's a journey. Don't presume you know the answer or the final outcome. Just take it on a journey and see where it'll lead.
And be aware of the nature of the AI that you're talking about, because again, if it's a large language model powered solution, you probably don't understand how much it's going to cost. You probably don't understand what your people are putting into it, and you may not understand what governance is coming from the EU or the UK, etc., to be compliant to how you're using it.
Yeah.
Which is something else companies need to be very, very mindful of. It's going to make GDPR look like a walk in the park, being AI compliant. Certainly if you're doing business in the EU as it stands. And there are businesses around that can help you with that. And be aware of the same old things. You put crap in, you're gonna get crap out. That ain't changed.
Yeah, I think my takeaway, and thank you, I've learnt so much, but my takeaway is education, awareness, talk to the right people on the floor and in the industry, the same as you would for any change management. I don't know why you would treat it any different. Walk before you can run, understand what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
But it's been a great chat, Vince. Thank you so much for being our first guest. It's been a riveting conversation, and hopefully we can invite you back soon.
It's been an enormous pleasure.
Good.
Thank you.
I might ask you back.
We'll try and make that blur filter work so that my home office disaster isn't so distracting.
So like, share, subscribe and comment. We want to hear your comments, and we want to hear your opinions of AI. What have you tried to apply in your own business, and has it gone well? Has it gone badly? We'd love to know.
Excellent. Yeah, fascinating conversation. Vince, thank you. I'm sure once we stop recording, we're going to carry on chatting, because I think this could go on forever. But really a lot of fun, very interesting and insightful. I've learned loads today. Really great. Hope listeners have as well. Yeah, as Keith said, we'd love to hear what you've got to say about this topic. It feels like there was a lot in there that people might have views on, but let us know what you think. And of course, we'll be back next Thursday. Thank you.